to the Ty Butler Show on this Thursday morning here in New York City. I want to make sure we are live on all of our apps, on YouTube, on X, and hit me up, Ty D. Butler. We're live, baby. Let's do it. Let's talk about it. Get into the Yankees, get into the Mets. Man, what a disgrace both of these teams have become right now. It's just embarrassing to watch. And, we keep bouncing around. Which team are you more concerned about? Which team do you have more faith in? And at this point, I still would lean Yankees just because I don't trust the American League. And I just think that they have the path of least resistance. But man, after what you've watched the last couple nights against the Tigers, and you know what's happening too. So let's start with the Yankees. Once again, Ty D. Butler is where you can find me on X and on IG. Hit me up on the YouTube page. If you're watching me on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, Ty D. Butler. The thing about the Yankees is nothing but good things to say about them up until the start of this series. Because we talked about that difficult, 12-game stretch against the Astros and the Blue Jays, the Tigers, and the Red Sox. And through the first two series, they were answering the bell. Took 2 of 3 from Houston. Dropped the first game against Toronto. You're thinking, oh boy, this could get ugly. Then they won the last 2 games, and it was on the strength of that pitching because they didn't score a ton of runs, but the pitching was excellent. But now, first 2 games of this Tiger series, they've been outscored 23-3. So they're undoing some of that goodwill from the first couple of series. And now you look at it, and they've got a chance tonight with Cam Schlittler on the mound to get swept. Cam Schlittler coming off of his worst start, where he got shellacked by the Blue Jays in that opener. And I don't expect him to be as bad as he was that night. But it's a pretty big game for Cam Schlittler. Now, it's not as important, because this is the argument people are going to make. And I understand it. Those division games obviously are more important than the games against teams not in the division. But think about what the Yankees had at stake coming into this series. We spent so much time talking about the American League East. I think we kind of lost. We lost the plot in all of this. Because of how they performed against the Astros and the Blue Jays, the Yankees coming into this series were set up to challenge for not just the American League East title, but the number 1 overall seed. That's what they were in position to do. So it wasn't just about the division crown. Because if they had won the first 2 games of this series, they'd be a game back of Detroit for the number 1 overall seed in the American League, which means they've got a chance at a first-round bye. And who would have imagined they'd be in this position as they were going through that rough stretch where they were losing to all the best teams and looked like they were on the cusp of a first-round exit. So now that you're here, now that you're in this position where you're in danger of being swept, there are some alarms that have to be sounded. Now, for those of you who listen to me, forgive me, I'm going through a little bit of I don't know if this is flu-like symptoms or, the kids go back to school, so they bring all the germs back to the crib. But you guys know I've been very critical of Carlos Rodon, who ends up taking the L last night. I don't even think he was bad. 6 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, you sign up for that. Your number 2 starter giving that to you, you sign up for that. The problem is, it's twofold. One of the problems was the offense for the second night in a row completely disappeared. 0 production. And that's actually been the case the last couple games for the Yankees, where in Houston finale, they score 8 runs. Scored 1 run against the Blue Jays Friday night. Scored 3 runs and 4 runs, respectively, in the 2 games against the Jays. So we had gotten accustomed to, remember what they were bludgeoning the Nationals and the White Sox. They were bludgeoning the tomato cans. And all of a sudden you grow accustomed to, is this offense capable of putting up big numbers like this consistently? And in this series, that has not been the case. So a lot of pressure on Schlittler tonight. Yankees catch a break because the Astros beat the Blue Jays. So you don't lose any division ground. But as I talked about, I had my hopes set on, could they possibly get the number 1 overall seed? Like, how crazy would that be? The conversations we were having in August. If they ended the season as the number 1 overall seed, that was legitimately on the table. Which, at this point, I don't know how realistic it is. With the Tigers now being 3 games ahead of them. And the problem is, because I just committed that same mistake, where I say, you don't lose any ground against Toronto because they lost last night. So you actually are in this series with Houston and Toronto, rooting for Houston, which is an odd place to be in. But this coming Sunday, you're now 2 weeks away from the end of the season. So you're running out of time here. The Yankees trail the Blue Jays 3 games in the American League East, which is actually 4 because they've lost the season series. So you got to finish ahead of them. And they've got a cupcake schedule with the White Sox, the Orioles, and the Orioles again. But you're running out of time to catch this team. And the Jays are dealing with that Bichette injury, so we'll see how it affects them. But after this Houston series, they're home for Baltimore. Then they go to Tampa. Then it's Kansas City. They end the season with 6 straight home games against the Red Sox and the Rays. So you're going to be counting on these other teams to help you. And I just feel like the Yankees have run out of time. This was an important series to take. They have now lost it. And you hope that the worst case scenario doesn't happen, which is them actually getting swept. Ty D. Butler, hit me up. I want to hear from you guys in the comments, in the chat. We are taking your comments, whether it be on YouTube or on X. So hop in the chat, y'all. I want to see if I can pull it up here. Hop in the chat, y'all. Hop in the chat. Come on. Let's do this. Taking this to another level. The Ty Butler Show. Put some clips out on Instagram. I should also mention it is the 24-year anniversary of 9/11, one of the most devastating days in our country's history. So I want to send out heartfelt prayers to the families who are still dealing with, the magnitude of what was an atrocious day in our country's history, where over 2,000 people perished. And it's one of those days where you obviously will never forget it. But it's important for us to every single year acknowledge those who lost their lives. But the strength of this country is that we, I guess, position ourselves to be united. There's a lot happening that I don't really feel like getting into at this moment. I have the power to do it because it's my show, and I could talk about whatever I want on my show, and I've got a bunch of different opinions and takes on what we've seen in the last 18, 19 hours on the heels of Charlie Kirk being gunned down on that campus in Utah. And we're learning some more news as to what went down. But I just don't feel like at this point I want to have that conversation. And again, it's not because I'm not able to. It's not because I don't have the mental capacity or the brain power to engage in intellectual conversations of that significance. Because I've got thoughts on everything that transpired. I've got thoughts on the commentary since that transpired. I also have some thoughts on what the Yankees did last night. But just because, again, we're dealing with the 24-year anniversary of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon being attacked, there is just so many emotions that are overwhelming right now. Out of respect to the people who have that going on, I just don't think that this is the right time to talk about it. And I want to emphasize again, got a lot of thoughts, got a lot of takes, and having this platform will allow me to disseminate those opinions when the time comes, but just not the right day for it. Just me, I got to feel like I'm doing the right thing. Because a lot of people, here's the problem. They get up on here, on their platforms, turn the microphone on, turn their cameras on, and they just want to be seen. They want to go viral. They have takes that aren't necessarily emerging from their core, which is where you want people to operate from, right? Like if you got morals and values and that's something that you want to disseminate to your audience, there's an integrity part of that I don't feel a lot of people have at this moment. So we're just going to steer clear of that. And, shout out at Stanislow says not the day. So right. So that's not the day to do that. It is the right day to send a shout out to my mom. Her birthday today. Shout out to my mom celebrating her 51st birthday, hanging out in Ocean City. So I do want to show love to my mom, who's also the co-pastor of my church. So big up to my mom. I love you so much. Such a beautiful woman through and through. The biggest and most significant reason as to why I am the person I am today, I guess for better or for worse. But happy birthday to my mother, who I love with all of my heart, who continues to inspire not just me, my wife, my kids, but also a foundation of people who tune into church every single Sunday and who are looking for the dulcet tones of that voice. And she, of course, does at times give sermons. So happy birthday to my mom. Back to the Yankees. Pathetic showing, man. Back-to-back nights in the Bronx. Pathetic showing, so I'm not happy about that. But I guess today gives them an opportunity to salvage the rest of this series. You get swept. Because here's the thing. The Astros can very well win this game today against the Blue Jays. The Astros win this game against the Jays, and the Yankees salvage this series, and the Yankees will know the result of that game because Astros-Toronto, that's a 307 affair. Kevin Gausman against, let's see who the pitcher is for, it's Christian Javier Gosman, who shut the Yankees down last weekend. So it's certainly a game Houston can win, and the Yankees will know the result of this game prior to them taking the field today. Cam Schlittler coming off of a horrendous start. I don't expect that to continue. So there's a chance they gain a game in the standings where all is not lost. I just feel like they're running out of time. We've got 2 weeks and 3 days left of the season, and they haven't been able to close the gap yet. So the Yankees, I'm not panicking, but where the hell's the offense, y'all? Where's the offense? And that bullpen, we haven't even talked about the bullpen yet. That bullpen the last couple nights, man, this was supposed to be a strength of the team. The bullpen was supposed to be a strength of this team. Here's what I'll tell you guys. Despite what we saw last night, because everyone in that Yankee pen had their hands in it. It was, Weaver, Tim Hill, Duval, Leiter Jr. Was fine. Gave up a couple hits and a run. The guys I trust coming out the Yankees bullpen. I trust Bednar. I trust Weaver. I trust Tim Hill. That's the list. Talking about crunch time of a playoff game, the Yankees have 3 relievers who I trust. And don't talk to me about what Devin Williams has done since he's been demoted. I don't care about what he's done since being demoted. You could have been doing this all season long. Mark Leiter Jr., I'm on the fence about him. Still can't quite put all my eggs in that basket. Duval has just been an absolute mess since joining the Yankees. An absolute mess. He's got a 6.59 ERA. Coming over from the Giants, where he was sensational. Got to the Yankees, lights too bright. I don't trust Duval. I don't really trust Mark Leiter Jr. all that much, which is going to, and this is going to be very interesting to watch, because we know these managers have an itchy trigger finger. They cannot wait to get to that bullpen. They cannot wait. Late in games, that pitch count hovering at about 90-ish, they can't wait to get to that pen. The Yankee strength, in my estimation, is that rotation. Fried, he's been tremendous since turning things around. He's been tremendous. I now feel like, you know what? I trust him again. Max Fried was dealing with the blister issue, and you thought, oh boy, and this always aligns with my theory that when someone's bad, you almost get encouraged when you find out there's an injury, because it explains why they're bad, and it's not just that they're bad, right? So Max Fried, who was so sensational on that Friday night against the Red Sox. The Yankees lost because they took him out too quickly. Follow it up by being tremendous again against the Nationals, dominated the Astros, and was pretty good in that win against the Jays. So that's 4 straight starts for Max Fried. Has been anywhere from good to excellent. I trust him. I still can't find it in me to trust Carlos Rodon, because that's just not a guy who has the look of someone who inspires confidence. Too damn sweaty. I'm starting to sweat. So Rodon, it's going to take a lot for me to, and you can say it's unfair, it's going to take a lot for me to start to trust him. But the average Yankee fan, I'm sure, if we're just going based on the type of season he's had, will say they trust Carlos Rodon. Schlittler, I made the case for a couple weeks. That is your number 2 starter in a playoff series. And then, it's Luis Gil and Will Warren, back end starters who might not end up having to start games. They could be brought in for long relief. So I guess that's what's going to help the Yankees. Their starting rotation is so good. Once you start chopping somebody, you're not going to need 5 starters in the postseason. One of those guys goes to the bullpen. They can come out and just assuming that it translates well, because not all starters feel comfortable coming out of the bullpen. Assuming it translates well, you'll have a correction to some of the, flaws in that pen. But that bullpen the last couple nights has been disastrous. And I'm telling you, Weaver, Bednar, Tim Hill, those are the 3 guys to trust. That might be all you need when one of those starters from the Yankee rotation goes to the bullpen. But you're going to need some length, though. You're going to need length out of Fried and Rodon. Rodon gave you 6 innings. I mean, I can't kill him for that. Gave up the 2 runs, but 6 innings, 2 runs, I can't. It would be disingenuous. It would be agenda-driven, because I made my thoughts about Rodon very clear. I don't trust him. But if I come on here today and I'm killing him for that performance last night, that would be insincere. That would be disingenuous, or it would be attached to some agenda that I have against him. That's not the type of guy that I am. Awful loss for the Yankees last night. Can't get swept by Detroit. They should have the favorable pitching matchup, but felt that way last night. And look how that went. So the Yankees, in desperate need of a win, turn to Cam Slittler tonight. All right, let's go to the New York Mets. Here's the deal, guys. I remember I was on television last Friday night. And one of the things I said was that I can't figure out the Mets because they're too topsy-turvy. They're too up and down. That's what I said on TV just 6 days ago. That I can't figure out the Mets because they'll sweep the Phillies, then they'll lose 3 or 4 to the Marlins, then they'll lose 2 or 3 to the Reds, and now they are in danger of being swept by the Phillies. I want to amend that. I can figure out the Mets. They're a bad baseball team. The Mets are a bad baseball team. Because, and this has been quoted quite often, and it's never been more apropos. When you show me who you are, I have to believe you. Are they a talented team? Absolutely. We can go up and down. Soto and Alonso and Lindor. They've got talent. No questions. And even throughout that rotation with the Petersons, and we got wowed by McClain. They've got talent. They've got talent. But it hasn't exactly led to them winning games. So I can figure them out. There's nothing to be mystified by when they've been this bad for 3 months. I can figure out the Mets. They're not a good baseball team. And maybe, just maybe, that over the course of the next 2+ weeks, they can figure it out. But here's what we're not going to do, guys. We're not going to use what happened last year to buoy our confidence in this baseball team. Because what people are going to say is, well, remember last year, got in as a wild card, on the road in Milwaukee, won that series, on the road against Philadelphia, won that series, got to the NLCS, pushed the would-be champs to 6 games. The reason why I am not allowing for that false equivalency is because the context of it matters. And the context of it is this. That Met team last year, for 3 straight months to end the season, had the best record in baseball. That Met team last year had a guy leading the charge who finished second in MVP. And I argued should have been the MVP. That Met team last year had a swagger, had a juice, had something about them. The it factor, which is immeasurable. But they had something about them last season. They were never out of games. How about these Mets, who have yet to win a game when trailing after 8 innings? How about these Mets, who all throughout their rotation have nothing but question marks? And once again, Clay Holmes last night, 4 innings, 6 hits, 4 earned runs. Night after night, you're getting suspect starting pitching to the point where the only guy you trust is a rookie. And now, as we sit here on September 11th, how is it possible for there to still be an ongoing audition for who your number 1, number 2, and number 3 starters are if you make the playoffs? Now, you get some help because the Giants lost to Arizona yesterday. So when we take a look at the old standings here, the Mets, who, even though that division race is over, hanging on to that 3rd wild card spot by just 2 games. You get some help, and all of a sudden, Cincinnati climbing up there. So you get some assistance there. But this is not the same Met team as last year. And it's confounding because they should be better. I don't know how you add Juan Soto and look worse. And I'm not blaming Juan Soto. I'm blaming their general manager, David Stearns. Because when it was time for him to upgrade that starting rotation at the deadline, he punted. They had obvious needs at the deadline. Helsley, it's been a disaster. But also the starting rotation, he decided to punt on that. Because he has his own philosophy when it comes to starting pitching and how valuable those top end arms are for a team trying to win a championship. And a lot of people's counterpoint will be, look at the Dodgers, a bunch of injuries, they still won the World Series. Does this Met team look like the Dodgers? Also, let's stop throwing the Dodgers around like that team wasn't battle tested. Like that team hadn't been in a 4-year span, 17, 18, in a 4-year span, hadn't been to the World Series 3 times and won 1 championship. So this organization with LA, with Friedman running the operation, that's one that there's proof of concept. So even though I may be skeptical about how you attack your rotation or some decisions you make, at least with the Dodgers, I've seen you win. So yes, last year, that was a suspect rotation that was able to piece it together to win a championship. But I had just a couple years ago saw them win a championship. I had just seen them win the title. And then 2 years before that, I had seen them in the World Series. And then the year before that, I had seen them in Game 7 of the World Series. So as far as benefit of the doubt, I think the Dodgers have earned that. Whereas we bring it back to the Mets, that has not been earned. So stop comparing yourself to the Dodgers. We need to see you win first. They now say, you know what? Might have disagreed on the surface with your philosophy, but heck, it worked. That Met rotation is an abomination. And we've been saying this for months. For the last 2 months, they've played like one of the worst teams in baseball, y'all. One of the worst teams. So in a lot of ways, this is completely different from what we saw last year. And Friday night at Citi Field, I mean, it should be a doozy. Because what you have is all of a sudden a Rangers team that's starting to play pretty good baseball coming into your ballpark. And the Mets could be sitting on a 6-game losing streak. They lose this game tonight. David Peterson, more on him in a moment. If the Mets lose this game tonight, they are sitting on a 6-game losing streak with a Rangers team that all of a sudden has started to figure some things out, and Jacob deGrom on the mound. How about that? How about that against your rookie, Jonah Tong? So you've got Tong, Sproat, McClain, all 3 rookies going this weekend to try to save your season. And wouldn't that be just right in line with the mood and the tenor of what the second half of the season has been for the New York Mets? That'd be right in line with that. Because they have turned to rookies to save their season. That rotation has been so garbage. You are relying on rookies to save your season. Because think about how we spoke about the Jets. The failed Aaron Rodgers experiment. Think about how much of a disaster that was. Failure. Blew up in flames. Think about how much we ridiculed, and rightfully so, the Brooklyn Nets with Kyrie, KD, and Harden. Well, the Jets, I guess, have an explanation for it. Rodgers tore his Achilles, 4th play of the season. The Nets suffered injuries, and they made the second round of the playoffs. There is no excuse for the Mets here. 0. You missed the playoffs, we could make the list. Biggest failures, most epic collapses in New York sports history. This team will be right at the top. With that payroll, adding Juan Soto, Lindor coming off of a year where he was second in MVP, and because of your dereliction of duty, when it comes to that rotation, you missed the playoffs, and it's not. You take a look at the guys. You take a look at the standings. You missed the playoffs. It's not because the National League, outside of the division winners, we're talking about the wild card winners. Now, the Cubs, they're a different story. 20 games over 500. But the winner of that third wild card spot, it's not going to be some 90-win team. It's going to be, 85? So you missed the playoffs when all that was required from you was to win 85, 86 games? Dog. My question is, how do we atone for that? And I know in this market in New York, we love talking about guys getting fired, general manager, Cashman and Boone and Thibodeau, Saleh. Like we do, Dable, we do that a lot. But if all that was required from you was to win 86, 87 games, a year after you made the NLCS Game 6, in the offseason when you added Juan Soto, you missed the playoffs completely, it's going to be some hell to pay for that. It's going to be some hell to pay for that. So, big game tonight, and I said we were going to get more on David Peterson. What happened to him? What happened to David Peterson? I mean, this was the ace. This was the ace of the team. And he has just been awful. Just awful. For 2 months, he's been bad. Big start for him tonight. Your team's lost 5 straight games. You're going into a weekend where you're starting 3 rookies in successive days against a Rangers team that all of a sudden starting to heat up a little bit. 5 straight how many long losing streaks do the Mets have this year? It's like every time we get into a big picture discussion of the Mets, we're recapping a long losing streak. Second half of the season, 4 straight losses. Then they had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight losses. Then they had a 3-game losing streak. So a 4-game losing streak, a 7-game losing streak, a 3-game losing streak. Now they've lost 5 straight. That's a bad baseball team. So when I'm on TV last week and I'm like, can't figure them out, I can figure them out. They're a bad baseball team. It's on David Peterson tonight to try to change that a little bit. Because you don't make the playoffs. You miss the playoffs. Oh boy. Conversations need to be had. Ty Butler is where you can find me on Twitter, which is X, and on Instagram. Big games for both the Mets and the Yankees today. We'll recap them tomorrow.